These paleo and keto brownies are extra fudgy, super easy, just 5 ingredients and 1 gram net carb a pop. Now that's what we call the ideal low-carb chocolate dessert. The recipe was first published on January 8, 18, and has been updated to provide more info on various sweeteners. Suuuper Fudgy. Ridiculously decadent, Suuuper Fudgy and intensely chocolatey, these keto brownies are one indulgent low-carb chocolate treat. Plus, they're super easy and with staple, grain-free, pantry ingredients. P.S. These are very chocolatey, as in proper chocolate. So ideal for you dark chocolate lovers out there. The origins. This recipe happens to be a keto adaptation based off Alice Medrick's famous cocoa brownies, incidentally one of the most popular brownie recipes on the web. And the keto result varies little from the original, albeit perhaps a little less chewy and more melt in your mouth sorta thing, courtesy of the lack of gluten. Fun fact, Medrick's original recipe called for beating vigorously with 40 strokes exactly, to incorporate the batter. Now that's what we call precision. A couple, very simple rules. We'll start with the most important one: do not overbake the brownies. Timing might just be the most important rule when making any type of brownie, so you don't end up with a dry and crumbly mess. Keep an eye out for them, and take them out once the center is set and a toothpick inserted comes out moist but not drenching. We even prefer to slightly undercook them and chill them in the fridge before cutting. That's the secret for extra fudgy brownies. I've also noticed that when using powdered erythritol rather than xylitol, my favorite, you also need to decrease the baking time by about 5 minutes as they cook faster. You'll also want to use eggs at room temp. Reason being that if your cocoa butter mixture is not hot enough and your eggs are very cold, they'll solidify the butter and your batter will be too thick. Doesn't affect the end results, just annoying to spoon rather than pour. And if possible, refrigerate the batter overnight. This is an old Medrick rule, but it does work a charm to get a richer texture as the flavors have had a chance to mingle. Though if not possible, honestly don't sweat it, we've done them either way multiple times. Just keep in mind that your batter will solidify in the fridge as the butter sets, totally normal, and just pop the baking dish in the oven as is. The chocolate. Cocoa brownies are generally regarded as second best to their molten chocolate bar counterparts, given that they're generally more cake-like than fudgy. But that's most definitely not the case here, as these are some of the fudgiest brownies you'll ever make. Albeit healthier, as you can control the chocolate and fat input completely, so no added refined sugars, preservatives, etc. And of course, cocoa powder is much less expensive than chocolate bars, particularly keto ones. So think of these keto brownies as wallet-friendly too. Cocoa or cacao. Both work great, just know that quality really matters here. Our favorite will forever be the Dutch processed alkaline cocoa Valrhona, known to be one of, if not the best cocos in the world. But feel free to use a raw cacao powder, arguably more nutritional perks here, though keep in mind that your brownies will be lighter in color and more reddish in hue. Both are well and good, as long as they're unsweetened. P.S. A lightly sprinkle of flaky sea salt works wonders to cut through the chocolate in these guys. And Malden flakes are the undisputed best, by a mile. The flours. This recipe uses almond flour only, collision woman dancing fireworks. Yup, that's it. Having said that, you can always sub half of the almond for hazelnut flour, think Nutella, if you want to spiff things up a notch or give them a little twist. In terms of brands, for the almond either Anthony's or Well-Be's work great. Both are super fine grinds. The sweetener. You've got a couple options here. Xylitol has become my top choice, no aftertaste, best and chewier texture, Lakanto, barely any aftertaste, and many of you also love the golden version, and powdered swerve, some cooling sensation, but still great. Xylitol takes much longer to dry out though, so your brownies will be extra delicate, think gooey, right after baking. If using erythritol in any form, because it needs a little extra help to dissolve than xylitol, and they vary so much from brand to brand because of different fillers and so on, you'll want to be sure to use a powdered form. If you only have granular on hand, don't sweat it, and simply blend it in your very dry bullet or blender until powdered. Easy peasy. And one more thing to keep in mind, is that a few of you who have used erythritol, swerve in particular, report back periodically that your batter ends up thick. This seems to be improved by microwaving rather than using a water bath, and using powdered rather than regular. Though there seems to be no hard rule here. Doesn't seem to affect much the taste in the end, so just spread the batter rather than pour it in. But if you're finding your brownies feel too thick, simply add in an extra egg, just don't over-whisk or they could become more cakey. Fun fact, it might also be our taste buds here, but we've noticed that stevia-based sweeteners, such as Pyre, don't work so great when chocolate is involved as the aftertaste is accentuated. So we cannot recommend enough that you don't use stevia-based sweeteners here. Oh, and if just paleo or gluten-free or not restricted by sugars, simply sub 1:1 with coconut or regular sugar. And if using xylitol, make sure to be careful if you have a pup or kitty around the house, as it's highly toxic to the little guys. Dog. Ingredients: 130 grams unsalted grass-fed butter or 8 tbs coconut oil plus 1 tbs coconut cream if paleo. 140 to 200 grams xylitol powdered erythritol or coconut sugar if paleo. 80 grams cocoa powder. 1/2 teaspoon kosher salt. 2 eggs at room temperature. 70 grams almond flour. To garnish. Flaky sea salt optional but highly suggested. Serving suggestions. Unsweetened macadamia milk nice and cold. Instructions. 1. See recipe video for guidance. 2. Position a rack in the lower third of your oven and preheat to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 180 degrees Celsius. Line with parchment paper the bottom and sides of a 8 by 8 inch baking pan. Set aside. 3. Add butter, sweetener, cocoa powder and salt to a medium heatproof bowl. Melt over a water bath, whisking constantly, or use the microwave, in small increments. You'll want to heat it up until most of the sweetener has melted and the mixture is well incorporated. Note that erythritol, unlike xylitol, won't dissolve much at this point. Remove from heat and allow the mixture to cool slightly. 4. Add 1 egg at a time, whisking well after each one until completely incorporated. The texture should appear smooth, with all the sweetener dissolving into the mixture. And if using erythritol, and your batter ends up too thick, you may want to add an extra egg. Just be sure not to over-whisk, or your brownies could end up more cakey rather than fudgy. 5. Add the almond flour, whisking vigorously until fully blended, about a minute. 6. Bake for 15 to 25 minutes, we do about 23 with xylitol and 17 with erythritol, or until the center is just set and a toothpick inserted in the center comes out moist. This really does vary a lot from oven to oven, think convection etc., so give them a check from minute 15 the first time around, and remember that Yule brownies will continue to cook while they cool. 7. Sprinkle with flaky sea salt, optional, and allow to cool completely on a rack. Lift brownies using the edges of the parchment paper and cut into desired size, we do 16. To get extra clean edges, place in the freezer for 10 minutes prior to cutting.